3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Nittany No Huddle Podcast.
From Philadelphia to Los Angeles
And everywhere in between.
filmed at the Nittany No Huddle studio.
It's Jordo, Zach, and Coach Devin covering all things Penn State football all the time.
This is from 45 and it's blocked. Lions scoop it up. Brad Haley will score.
And here we go.
All right, welcome back, Nittany No Huddle Nation. I'm here in studio with Coach Devin, and we got Zach on the line. Today we're reviewing Penn State at Northwestern. Number 6 Penn State. We moved up one after absolutely schwacking Iowa at the whiteout. I was there. It was a great time. Enough about Iowa. Let's talk Northwestern. So Northwestern comes in 2-2 on the season. Minnesota was their last game. Big comeback there. I believe, what was 31-7? 31-10. They were down in the fourth quarter with like 12 minutes left. Come back, beat them in overtime. Their 2 wins have both came at home. 2 losses on the road to Rutgers and Duke. Yep. Rutgers and Duke. So I'll turn it over to Devin. He's got some stats, just recapping Northwestern so far.
Yeah, so, we always like to say the all-time record. Penn State leads at 15-5 all-time. Last year, Penn State won 17-7. It was a very, very ugly, rainy game, much heavier rain than even the Iowa game last week. I think Nick Singleton had like 3 or 4 fumbles. It was a rough game, but Penn State found a way to win. Interesting about Northwestern, obviously, all the offseason stuff really was not great for Pat Fitzgerald and the whole staff. So their interim coach this year is David Brown. It's his first year at Northwestern. He comes from North Dakota State in the FCS, obviously a very successful program there. He was hired as the defensive coordinator, but then when all the crap went down, he became the head guy. I think it obviously is a logical choice to get somebody that wasn't on the staff whenever all that was happening. So it kind of worked out in his advantage. One thing that stood out to me was that he's the 10th youngest coach in all of FBS. So he's still pretty young, trying to work his way up the ladder. And now, no matter really what happens this year, I think it's probably going to be a pretty successful year in his view because the expectations are completely at the bottom. He has no expectations. A couple things about Penn State, and then Zach, I'll turn it over to you because I know you have some stats too before we get into like the heart of what Northwestern is. 2 things that really stood out to me today as looking over stats is that Penn State has won 9 straight games, which we all know, like Penn State's on this hot streak right now. But more importantly, all 9 of those wins have been by at least 14 points. They're the only team over the last, I think it was 3 years, that have had a streak of longer than 5 wins of 14 or more points. So it's a pretty impressive streak that Penn State is on right now. And in that streak, they have scored at least 30-plus points in 11 straight games. So they're really putting it on. And Iowa was one that for a long time it felt like, are we going to get there? Are we going to keep the streak going and find a way to snuck in and get 31? So, Zach, I know you had some stats, too, about where Penn State ranks, leading the nation in some big defensive categories. So what do you think?
Yeah. So, the first thing I just mentioned before we hopped on, the fact that Penn State is number 1 in the country in total defense yardage per game is just crazy. And, part of that, I guess, is with the small sample size of only 4 games and Iowa, having 76 yards or whatever it is, that really impacts it. So either way, I still think there's plenty of teams that have played really weak schedules and have given up more yardage than that. So that's really telling, especially when you consider – from my perspective, and I think from our perspective generally, this defense strength isn't necessarily just stonewalling teams and keeping them from getting any yardage. It's more about the takeaways, big plays. So to me, the fact that they're number 1 in the country in the turnover margin and haven't turned the ball over on offense and number 1 in total yardage defense is just kind of crazy because that to me is like the best of both worlds where you're not letting them do anything on offense and you're taking the ball from them. It's kind of really hard to do both things. Again, is that turnover rate they're going to turn the ball over eventually, I think, on offense and defensively. You can't count on getting 3, 4, 5 turnovers every game. But I think the way that this team plays defensively with the athletes and the speed that maybe they can. Honestly, you saw Chop Robinson, Adisa Isaac, Danny Dennis Sutton, Jacobs. The pass rush is just unreal. So if you pull an Iowa and you get behind immediately and you have absolutely no offense, it's just how do you scheme up blocking that pass rush? I don't know how you do that. It's just going to be a problem for I think every team other than maybe the top teams that we always talk about. But
Yeah, I agree completely. We've looked really complete on defense, and it is what it is for the other teams, and I don't think Northwestern will be able to really handle that. Shout out to our boy Duncan. He says Penn State by 100. And then we have Derek. He says 44-13. We'll get to our predictions at the end. Thank you both for watching. I think we have 3 total viewers right now, so make sure to comment your score predictions or anything else you really want to comment. We'll take them all in. So, Devin, you got any more stats or anything to go with Zach's?
Not really. I think Zach pretty much covered all of the stuff. So I think the turnover margin, and maybe this is our segue into the Northwestern offense versus Penn State defense. I think the turnover margin is going to be the big key because Penn State is plus 11. They have not turned the ball over yet this year. The only team in all of college football, as Zach mentioned. Northwestern is -4, I believe. Is that what you saw too, Zach? I think it was it might have been 3.
I think it was 3 or 4.
Okay, so they're -3 or 4, and I just feel like Penn State's going to find a way to create turnovers to take care of limiting what Northwestern can do, because Northwestern so far this year has proven they're very one-dimensional offensively based on their personnel, and they want to do one thing, and that is throw the ball. Northwestern wants to throw the ball as much as possible. And I guess that's kind of our segue into the offense. Is that?
Yeah, we can go into offense.
So Northwestern's quarterback is Ben Bryant. He wears the number 2. He threw for all of 400 yards in that Minnesota upset. I think it was 396 against them. He's only completing about 59% of his passes, but the fact that in 4 games he's thrown for 804 yards and threw for almost 400 against Minnesota, he's a kind of strange situation. As Franklin pointed out in his press conference today, this is his 4th destination, kind of, I guess.
Yeah, technically 3rd, but
yeah. So he started Cincinnati, Eastern Michigan, back to Cincinnati, and now at Northwestern. So why you would go back to a school that you transferred from, I don't know, but for whatever reason, I think Bryant can really sling the ball around, and I think it's something that will be, in my opinion, something I'm really excited to see, is knowing that Northwestern is going to try to throw the ball and they're not afraid to stretch the field. Something that we talked about, like West Virginia was more of a run-first team. Delaware is its own kind of beast where they're short, very short passes. You got Iowa in there. Illinois is not a passing team. So you see these 4 teams that are all stylized one way. And now we get Northwestern, who's going to throw the ball a lot. Let me do this math real quick. What's 136 divided by 4? 34. So, I mean, Bryant's averaging 34 pass attempts per game. I would love to see that. I think we have the best secondary in all of college football. I truly believe it. I'm going to stand by it. I think we have the best secondary in all of college football. And I'm really excited to see how guys can perform against them.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, we're seeing a different type of offense going from last week where we saw no offense. So this is like a step up for a test for us. But to see them throw the ball around, I mean, with our corners and safeties, that's risky in my opinion. I think I would take my chances on the ground, but maybe they watched the Iowa tape and was like, we don't want any part of that. Like, at least in shotgun, you have a chance of, maybe not getting sacked immediately. So, or tackle for loss immediately.
Right.
Jack,
I think they've just really struggled to run the ball. And part of it too is game situation where, so both with Rutgers and Minnesota, they fell behind early, especially the Minnesota game. They fell behind early and they were behind the whole game. And so it basically became a throw to get back in it type game. But from what I can tell, Rutgers is another good example where they just really struggled to run the ball and they forced Bryant to be one-dimensional. I do think he is a pretty competent quarterback. I think if you watched any of the Minnesota highlights, they have a couple guys that can play on the outside. But again, I'm looking at the Big Ten team stats at the moment, and Northwestern is dead last in in rushing, averaging only 98 yards per game. There's only 4 teams at less than 140. And so they're down there in company with Indiana, Michigan State, and Iowa, which is probably not good company to keep this year. So they're just
offensive teams.
Yeah, very one-dimensional. And I think it's already bad enough to be one-dimensional, but when you're facing a defense like Penn State's, it's got to be scary trying to scheme up. How do we move the ball when the other team knows we can't run on them and they know it's a pass? And you've got to figure out, how do we help our tackle block Chop Robinson, and how do we help the other tackle block Adisa Isaac? And what do we do when they bring that Sutton in and they put Chop right over the center? And I mean, some of those formations in the Iowa game where they had the 3 defensive ends on the field and they had kind of 3 down linemen and linebackers just standing up everywhere. That's got to be scary as an offensive coordinator, as an offensive line coach. Just what do you do? I mean, how do you ask your center or your guard to handle a Chop Robinson? So I think that's where the way to beat that is to just consistently plod on the ground and get 3 or 4 yards of carry. And I just don't think Northwestern's a team that's going to be capable to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. One person to bring up, Northwestern, which is one word. Thank you, Theo, for correcting that for us on the title. Number 17, Bryce Kurtz. We went and rewatched the Minnesota game earlier today. He leads the Big Ten with 91.3 receiving yards per game. So he's definitely a big threat, but I think our corners can handle that. And if that's their really only option, and like you said, Manny Diaz, we dial up those blitzes, get him in 3rd and long, it's going to be tough to get the ball out quickly and put up those kind of numbers. At least I hope. That's really the only additional guy I had. I don't know if you had anybody else that was highlighted, Zach, that you want to talk about, or Devin.
Yeah, so I had a guy, the name may sound familiar to some Penn State fans, A.J. Henning, played actually for 3 straight years with Michigan. Didn't get a lot of run, but he saw the field some. He's a receiver there. He's second on the team in receptions to Bryce Kurtz, who Jordan just mentioned. Not nearly the yardage. He's not the big play threat that Kurtz is, but he also has 12 carries for 76 yards. So he's a guy I think that they're going to try to do some different things with. He's fairly athletic. Again, not a guy that should give the Penn State secondary or the Penn State back 7 trouble, but I think that's just a guy to keep an eye on in terms of where they line him up, with what they do with him, maybe jet sweeps and try to get him incorporated in the run game. And then they have a couple tight ends as well that they like to throw the ball to, but not really anybody that stands out on the perimeter that should, to Jordan's point, give you concern based on what we expect the Penn State secondary to look like in this matchup. And again, I think, Jordan, you kind of covered it earlier. We really haven't had a chance to see the secondary. I mean, part of it, I think, is we know they've just sort of locked everybody down, but part of it is also Iowa, Illinois. These teams aren't really known for their passing game. So I feel like, just as an aside, I feel like we haven't heard the name Kalen King mentioned like at all on the broadcast this season, which is a good thing, and it means teams aren't even trying to throw in his direction. Just kind of a neither here nor there, but it's kind of cool to think about. And I think we saw a little bit differently, like with Porter Jr. last year. I think there were some games where teams just did not throw to him at all. But then, like the Purdue game, I mean, Purdue was not scared of him at all, and they threw it all over the field to Charlie Jones. So in any event, yeah, I would say A.J. Henning is just another guy to watch as far as somebody that might be able to do a couple different things for Northwestern.
Yeah, and shout out to all our subscribers. Sammy says 38-3 Penn State. So we're gonna move along here. Devin, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
Yeah. So AJ Henning he's the guy that caught the game-winning touchdown there on a really, really nice play from Northwestern, where he started on the right side, almost kind of lined up as like an extended tight end, not quite into the slot, but out there, and then wheeled around to the other side on a really, really nice design play. And I actually didn't even write down who their offensive coordinator was, but it was a really nice play. The attendance at that game, 20,000 people, they were really going crazy. So
yeah, that's not even as big as Penn State student section, but
yeah,
they're trying. They're trying.
Big crowd to watch Northwestern.
If any Northwestern fans are out there, I have a lot of respect for Northwestern's program.
Not anymore.
I mean, say what you want about the allegations that have came out, but I always liked Pat Fitzgerald, and he probably did more with less than any other coach in NCAA because it is very difficult to recruit to Northwestern with the academic standards. They are outside Chicago, so that helps a little bit, but yeah, we'll see. I didn't think they were going to win a game all season, so they've already surprised me on that. So,
and Zach, we made the joke, but I mean, they're 1-1 in the Big Ten right now, and if they have any offense, hell, they might win the Big Ten West. As absolutely absurd as that sounds, because there's just no offense over there.
Yeah, there really isn't. Any other final thoughts before we move on? Did you want to talk anything else, or are you good?
Offense, I think I'm good.
Yeah.
The only thing, Zach, I did actually just send you a text message. I don't know if you saw it. Do you know, is Ryan Helinski hurt? Because didn't he start against Penn State last year? And I see he's 1 for 1 with an 85-yard touchdown. Is he just down the depth chart?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the story there is there.
Yeah,
I saw that today as well. I assumed I've seen Ben Bryant starting all year, and I assumed actually that Helinski was just out of eligibility or had transferred away, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, he has an 85-yard touchdown on his only pass. It's kind of crazy.
I mean, he may want to just kind of like ride that out to the end of the year. He's got his QB rating is like
fake field goal.
I don't know, man. I'm just throwing stuff out.
His QB rating is like perfect right now, so maybe just wants to keep it that way.
Maybe a Northwestern fan can let us know in the comments.
Yeah, let us know. Do we want to move on to defense?
I'm good.
All right. So, Zach, what do you have for Northwestern's defense versus our offense?
So, conversely, I talked about on the offensive side of the ball, Northwestern can't run. On the defensive side, you may not be surprised to find out they can't stop the run either. They're dead last in the Big Ten. They're giving up 184 yards per game on the ground. They're only giving up 187 through the air, which is one of the better rates in the Big Ten. But I think that's because most teams are able to run, kind of gash them on the ground. So I'm hopeful if you're a Penn State fan, this is the game where you say, look, we just haven't got those big explosive plays in the run game. I think if we go one more week and you still haven't seen them, it may be time to hit the panic button, because I think if you're not able to gash them on the ground this week, I'm not sure what the explanation is, honestly. I think Northwestern, as far as their defense goes, there's really one name that you have to talk about, and that's a guy, Bryce Gallagher, their middle linebacker, has just some absurd stats as far as tackles go. He has 44 tackles on the season already. He had 19 total tackles in the Rutgers game against Duke. He had 13 total tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss. He had an interception against UTEP. So he does a little bit of everything. And he just makes a ton of tackles, and that he's a guy
317 now in his career.
He's a guy that's been there forever. If you followed, in past years, that's a name. It's one of those names that like you just like, how's that guy still there? Is that like a COVID year or something? Or
it's JT Barrett.
Yeah, he's the guy to watch. But they've gotten pushed around on the ground by basically everybody.
And they're actually 112th in all of FBS in run. Was that run defense?
Yeah, 112 overall. Yeah,
right. Which is one of those stats where you're like, there's 112 teams in Division I football. It's not good when you're so low on the list that makes you question how many more teams are beneath them. But I mean, just for example, the Minnesota game last week, Darius Taylor, Minnesota's kind of newfound lead back, he had 31 carries for 198 yards, and the long was 43. So it wasn't one of those situations where he had like an 80-yard run or something, or a 90-yard run, and it padded the stats. They, as a team, they finished with 244 yards on the ground. So it's, again, I don't want to be extreme, but it's one of those situations where if we're still talking next Saturday afternoon in our instant reaction about, man, we ran the ball okay, but we can't seem to pop any big plays. I think it might at that point be time to be a little bit alarmed that, what's going on? There's got to be some explanation.
Yeah, and one other thing while we're talking about last week's game, I think you cursed PJ Fleck. Like, I think we need to talk about that. You said it in the preseason. He's the most underrated coach in all NCAA, and he's just proving you wrong. So, yeah,
I don't know what's going on. They dropped the oars in the river. The boat's not rowing anymore. I think Jordan, you watched a little bit of the Week 1 Nebraska-Minnesota game. That concerned me a little bit, just knowing Nebraska really, really struggling on offense, and Minnesota basically won that game by the skin of their teeth. That kind of kind of worried me about Minnesota. I thought they were a team coming into the year that they might, given the state of the West, they might be able to climb up and perhaps be in the mix. Again, who's to say they won't be? I mean, they do have the Nebraska win, so they're 1-1 in the West. I mean, it's kind of hard.
Yeah.
Honestly, who other than who do you point to and say that there's no chance this team can win, 4 or 5 more games in the West? Is Nebraska out of it? I don't know. I mean,
they got to play each other, so somebody has to win.
Somebody has to win. I mean, I think at this point, Wisconsin is like, if there's a team to beat, it's Wisconsin's to lose. But they haven't been super impressive either, and they just lost maybe one of their top 2 offensive players to a season-ending injury. So if you're Northwestern, number one, you've got basically nothing to lose, because you were told from the summer this season was written off because of all the off the field issues. So you're just kind of playing with house money, and you just had this huge win in a comeback victory over Minnesota. You've got all that momentum. You're going to find out. I'm not going to predict them to beat Penn State, but I guess if you're Northwestern, you couldn't ask for a better script coming into what will be the toughest game on their schedule, because they're expected to get killed and they have all the momentum from last week, and there's nothing to lose. They have nothing to lose. So it makes them slightly dangerous. I mean, it's the type of game where you come in expecting to see a trick play or two, because as the coaching staff, you're playing with house money. You're not going to be tight. You're gonna do what you think you got to do to try to get the W.
Yeah, and from the Penn State side, we do have the bye week next week, so I think Penn State wants to come in, look for the starters. If we get up big, look for the starters to come out early. We're gonna be resting them, I think. So it probably won't be as crazy as a blowout. I think it'll still be a blowout just because I think our defense is so good. Really the best in college football, in my opinion, based off what we did to Iowa last week. But I'm going to segue into our score predictions. I think I'm going to go Penn State 38, and Northwestern's going to get 12 points. They're going to kick a bunch of field goals, which I might have predicted this exact same thing last week, but that's what I'm going with.
I think it's going to be absolutely bloodbath. I think Northwestern's not good. And I actually think the opposite of what Jordan just thought. I think because it's a bye week next week, I think this is a chance for Drew Aller to get some recognition as being a legit, not top tier Heisman, but mid-level Heisman contender. And I think that Franklin lets him play a good bit because they have a bye week, and then Bo should play 90% of the UMass game realistically. So I actually think that it's going to be a complete blowout. I'm going to go way off the radar here. 52-6. Absolute bloodbath.
Watch out.
I'm going all in.
All right,
Zach, what do you got?
I'm going to be a little bit closer to Jordan. I think I'm going to go 41-10. I think there's a chance that maybe the beginning of the game is kind of like your classic 11 a.m. sleepy start, maybe a little bit of that, like we had with the Illinois game. But I think Northwestern can't stop the run, and they can't run the ball. That is the absolute worst case scenario when you're facing a Penn State team this year that rushes the passer like crazy, and the last thing you want to be in is 3rd and long. And I think this is a team that I think the coaches know there's been a little bit of angst in the run game, and I think they're going to really stress, like, we need to come in and just run the ball and gash them in the run game, and an offensive line. They've still been playing. Here we are 4 weeks into the season, and Vega Ione and Drew Shelton, and they're playing a lot of guys on that offensive line, which kind of tells me that they're not settled on is Vega going to eventually take that right guard job from Sal Wormley? Is Drew Shelton, is Caden Wallace on the hot seat? I don't know. I mean, I know Franklin preaches depth, so it may just be that he knows most of these games are kind of in the bag, and so he just wants to get depth. But I don't know. That's another thing to watch, I think, in this game is the rotations, just to see who's, especially on that offensive line. But my bold prediction is Bo's going to rush for 100 yards.
There you go.
Okay.
And
all right.
I told Jordan earlier today, if Singleton doesn't get things figured out, he's in danger of getting passed on the rushing leaderboard by the backup quarterback.
That's wild.
I think I don't have it in front of me, but I think Singleton has like 230 yards on the season or something like that, and Bo has like 140 or something.
Wow, that's crazy.
Good
Yeah, it's
problem
funny
to
you
have.
say about the offensive line because in Franklin's press conference, he named like the offensive line, like team of the week or whatever, but he listed like all 7 offensive linemen. He's like, I consider those extra 2 starters. So I was like, okay, that's kind of a strange comment, but okay.
Yeah. And again, we talked about this in a previous podcast, like in the era of the transfer portal, you kind of have to, I mean, Drew Shelton started in the Rose Bowl last year. He started like the last 6 games of the year at offensive tackle. And then both of your tackles come back. Like, what do you do there? I mean, in today's day and age, don't you kind of have to keep that guy happy? And again, I'm being maybe a little bit cavalier because I do think part of it is that they like all 7 of those guys, and building depth is a real thing. And so, too often, I mean, quarterback's the one position I think where you say it's really hard to play guys just to build depth. I don't have a problem with them rotating in guys at guard and tackle. I think by the time you get to the end of the year or middle of the year, you sort of want to know who's who. But I don't know. We'll see. Maybe it'll be an all-year thing.
Yeah. I think that's about all we have. I do want to bring back up. We are still giving away tickets, 2 tickets and a parking pass to Rutgers at Penn State. They're good tickets. I just used them for the whiteout. So that was awesome. All you got to do is subscribe to us on YouTube, and you can send us a DM, or if you know us, text us, and we'll put you in the pool. And then we're going to do a live pick of the person. We're going to have like, what's it called? The Wheel of Death or something.
I call it Wheel of Doom in my classroom. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll have all the names in there. You'll be able to see how many people we had enter, and then it'll be completely random, and we'll get your contact information and give away the tickets. So,
and they're great tickets, and there's not a lot of people entered right now.
Yeah.
So you got a pretty good chance.
I think we're up to like maybe 17. So it's pretty good odds. So tell your friends, or don't tell them, and then keep it for yourself.
But still tell them to subscribe.
Yeah. Just tell them to like and subscribe this video. Devin, you have anything else you want to talk about?
I do not. Go Penn State.
Yeah. Zach?
Nothing further.
Nothing further for him. And just so you guys know, we're doing a different format. We're going a little shorter videos. So we'll put out more videos per week. So we're going to cap this one right around 30 minutes. That should be about the standard moving forward. We'll release our top 25s and pick'ems later this week. And then we'll always do our live reaction after the game. So look forward to seeing you guys out there. That's all I have. Nittany No Huddle, out.
Thanks for watching the Nittany No Huddle podcast.
Check us out on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook.
Podcasts are posted weekly on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss one of our new shows.